All right, we're in the dungeon of the Cape Girardeau County Common Pleas Courthouse. This is a basement used for storage, but this building was built in 1854 and held Confederate sympathizers, runaway slaves, and prisoners of various capacities for many years before it was closed and the county jail moved to Jackson, Missouri, the county seat. So this is an artifact. This is a machine of the criminal justice system that, of course, is no longer in use. But it's interesting that it's still here and some of the actual mechanisms are still in place. So come on down, let me show it to you. Be careful on those steps. What would you say, Randy? 30 feet below ground?
Yeah, it's a good 20, 30 feet.
Yeah. One more set. Grab the rails. Look at this. Dig this. Look at the stonework. That's rubble from the river, from Limestone River. And then you have this new networking equipment. And then an old circuit breaker from the 1950s. So I think they removed, asbestos lined pipes above us, steam pipes for a steam system for heat. So we are talking an old courthouse going back 125 years of various capacities. This door was not original. This was probably added about 1900. This was sealed off, and the entrance to this cell block or this cell was from the outside. And so, hang on a minute. Okay, light as it is. We're talking 20 feet by 10, 20, 30. 20 by 30 foot cell block room. And from my understanding, this place could have held up to 50 inmates at one time. And if you look at these rock walls, you can see how they're cobbled together. So big stones, little stones put in, mortared up. Of course, the mortar's almost out. This window is about 10 feet underground. And so you have a double set of inch thick. Oh, how you like those spider webs, Randy? That doesn't bother me at all, but it's going to bother my daughter when she sees this. Inch thick iron bars. There's a Mountain Dew can dropped into the trash, but it's at least 6, 7 feet up, I think. Up, I'll have to look at the shaft when we go outside. But very little light, very little possibility of anything happening with this. But these bars are still super tight, set into the stone walls, and that would have been it on any kind of light coming in, other than this door. This door is really interesting. Remember I said this additional door on the outside was added years later. This was the only entrance. And there were steps going down to this, and then these system right here would have had a padlock in it to hold this shut. And as this thing fell, it still slides. Look, this thing still works. The top one's frozen, but this bottom shows how this bar would go right into the steel, holes to hold that in place. It would go up, padlocked, and this could not be opened from the inside, thereby eliminating any need for a guard. These people would be in here under no supervision, no toilet, probably a can in the corner for everybody to use as a bathroom, and this door would have been shut. Come over here. Look at how close the bars are put together.
Oh yeah.
Very tight, very secure. No sign of damage, teeth marks, anything like that. It's like this thing has never been challenged. So this is the old cell. There are these two big rocks in here that makes you wonder why these are here. If they didn't fit into the wall, if they were, since they didn't fit, they just dropped them in here. So who would have sat on these rocks? Who would have used these things as a place to, I imagine the person in charge of the jail, the toughest inmate, would have this seat rather than sitting on the dirt, because it is a dirt floor. So the baddest bull goose in the prison, in the jail, would be sitting right here. Interesting story about this little place. Back in 1864, during the Civil War, a Southern sympathizer, a Confederate guerrilla from Bloomfield, Missouri, and I have his name, John Bolin. John was captured by Union soldiers and locked up in here, and there was mail that went back and forth to St. Louis about how they were going to try him, if they were going to try him in St. Louis or try him in Cape. Well, all that was resolved within a couple days because a mob came from south, from Bloomfield and from the area. I imagine he was burning barns, stealing horses, maybe shooting people, but he was a guy that had a bad reputation for this area. But a mob dragged him out of here, dragged him to Bloomfield, to the old toll road, to one of the toll gates, and hung him. It was a lynching there at the old toll gate in Cape Girardeau. So that was in the year 1864, dragged out of here and lynched. So that's one of the few actual stories. During the Battle of Cape Girardeau, apparently, Randy, you remember how many were captured? Was it 20?
It seems like dozens.
Like dozens.
Up to 30, 40, yes.
30, 40.
I'd have to go back
so
to
the
my
Confederate
records.
soldiers that were captured during the Battle of Cape Girardeau were held in here before they were transported either to, probably to Alton would have been the closest prison. There was a Confederate prison in Alton, Illinois. And so they would have been transported up the river to Alton. So it's kind of the history of this. As you can see, there's a modern, I say modern, 1920s, 30s iron ceiling, grates put in the top. Again, everything has been, top up has been changed in this building for all the modern wiring and networking, fiber optics, all of that kind of stuff. And this is new. I wonder why they put this little rail up here in the last couple of years. This is kind of odd that they would, the county would commit, building and grounds guys would come in and do something like this in here. You know,
I don't see a bow in the wall where they're trying to shore it up or anything.
It's just cheap handrail looking stuff. Doesn't make any sense. But I'll ask Pee Wee what's up with that. In my face-to-face classes, I've brought in 20, 30 students in here with one single candle and parked a candle on one of these stones, brought them all in here, shut the doors, turned off the lights, and had the candle running while I gave this tour. So it just kind of gives me chills even thinking about that. Those times I've had students packed in here and talking about this room and this dungeon. It's a dungeon. It's as close as you can come to an American dungeon. Flash this wall here, Randy. You just wonder how many people try to hide stuff in the mortars, in the cracks. You know, they take off wedding rings. Did they hide notes, knowing that they, were going to be hung? What happened in these walls with all the chinking coming out? So
We've never really looked closely, but I'm surprised we don't see any initials carved or
Well,
symbols.
here's some here, but I don't know how old the mortar is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you gotta
I see.
in R here or something.
Huh.
There's some other
Huh.
digging marks. Here's Tom, but you don't know how old some of the concrete is. Here's a little bit up here.
Yeah, would need a date
Yeah.
scratched in also to be sure.
Yeah, I think maybe some UV light on the actual stones
Ah.
to see if somebody carved into these actual stones. Because I think the mortar has been at different times. County commissioners have told people to come in here and try to seal things.
I see.
So, you know, it'd be interesting to kind of check that out. But that's all I have. For the class, don't really expect anybody to have access to a dungeon, but you're going to have police officer friends. You're going to be able to ask a police officer if you could look at what's inside a car, what kind of tools of the trade are out there. Remember, this is criminal justice, so courthouses, places where you pay fines, all of those are considered places or the mechanism of the criminal justice system. It takes so much and such a budget to run the total operations. And, you know, I could sit and talk for an hour about one of the steel toilets in one of the detention cells. I might still do that for this class, but how many thousands of dollars that cost, what the plumbing looks like, why it's set up like it is. There's so much equipment and mechanisms and part of the machine and running criminal justice. It's not just chase the bad guys. There's so much money that goes into this whole creation and the whole system. So that's all I got. Go ahead and shut it off and we're going to metal detect this floor.